And now I want to go back to CBS News chief legal correspondent Jan Crawford. Jan, I'm so sorry we lost you earlier there as you were talking to us, but I want to go back to just how significant today's ruling is.
Well, I mean, that's live television, right?
Exactly.
It's going to happen, and the Supreme Court's not going anywhere. This decision is not going to change. But I mean, this is, like I was saying, I mean, this is one of the most significant Supreme Court losses by a U.S. president, I think, in modern history. This is a Supreme Court that is invalidating a cornerstone of President Trump's economic policy. They're ruling 6-3 with 2 of President Trump's nominees joining the conservative Chief Justice and the 3 liberals ruling 6-3 to say that this federal law that he was pointing to, that he said gave him the power to kind of, impose these tariffs, that they're saying, no, that law doesn't say that. The law gives the president a lot of powers. It can regulate, imports. It can block imports. It can void imports. But it doesn't say in this laundry list of things that a president could do that it can also tariff imports. And so the 6 justices who invalidated these tariffs now are saying, with different reasons, the liberals and the conservatives have different reasons to get there, but the bottom line is these are done. And to Ed's point, you're talking 150, potentially $175 billion that the administration has collected with these tariffs. And so now it's going to go back to the Court of International Trade. That's how it's set up. You have thousands of businesses, as Ed said, from toy stores to Costco, who have sued wanting their refunds, and that's how that's all going to have to get sorted out. That's going to take some time. The administration, the Treasury Secretary said they do have the money to cover that, and there are other ways to levy these tariffs. So the bottom line is it may not change much for consumers at all, but it changes a lot in the terms of what the president can do with tariffs. And also, I think it's important to point out, it changes, I think, the narrative that we've heard from a lot of people critical of this Supreme Court, that they're in the tank for Trump, that they're always ruling for Trump. This is a Supreme Court, like I said, with 3 conservatives coming together, 2 Trump appointees to strike down what is one of his most significant policy initiatives. And this will not be his first loss, his last loss. I mean, it's his first one, but it won't be his last loss in the Supreme Court this term. There's going to be others on the horizon.
And Jan, I don't have your experience or your insight into this, but is there anything to glean from the fact that the majority opinion came from the Chief Justice?
He writes, I think he sees that as his role as chief to kind of take on some of these big institutional rulings, especially when they involve the president. Obviously, we saw him writing, for example, the immunity decision that said that presidents could not be prosecuted for their official acts while they were in office. So I was not surprised that he wrote that decision, and I thought from the arguments that Trump was going to lose this one. The dissenting justices are interesting. You've got a conservative Trump appointee, Justice Brett Kavanaugh, kind of leading the dissenters, the 3 conservative dissenters, saying that, look, if the law says presidents can block all imports, then of course they can tariff them, because that's so much shorter than a sheer block. But the majority was not persuaded. They believe that this laundry list of things the law authorized just didn't include the power to impose tariffs. But again, we'll see what happens for consumers, because there are those other tariffs out there, and there's other ways that the president can levy some of these tariffs going forward.
And Jan, just based on that, knowing that there are other ways for the president to levy tariffs, any chance this same situation gets back to the Supreme Court?
I think those other avenues, he's on much more solid legal ground. And he's also not being quite as ambitious, right? I mean, they're more limited. The laws themselves, by definition, they're more limited. And they require eventually congressional approval. Unlike this law that Trump, for the first time in history, a U.S. president tried to use for tariffs, that Trump asserted, it gave him essentially unlimited, unbounded authority to make the tariffs as high as he wanted and to keep them in place as long as he thought was necessary. The other laws are nowhere near that sweeping. So I think you're not going to see the same kind of impact and potentially the same kind of legal fight that gets to where we are today with this historic ruling from the Supreme Court. And I really hate it when people overuse those words like historic and breaking, but this one, landmark, is another one, but this one truly is. I think you've got to put it right up there with some of the most significant losses a U.S. president has suffered in the Supreme Court's modern history.
Okay, Jan Crawford, thank you so much for your time today. We appreciate it.
Thanks.